Hello, and welcome to Gloomy Realm. Before we begin, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy slow, unsettling stories that draw you into forgotten places and the darker corners of the night, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable, let your body relax, and allow the sounds of the outside world to slowly fade into silence. Tonight, we journey beyond the familiar, into a place where strange stories linger, and some mysteries are never meant to be explained. So close your eyes, listen carefully, and let yourself wander through the gloomy realm. Story 1, I work as a gas station attendant, and even now, I still remember every single thing that happened on the night my life was completely turned upside down. I remember the smell of cheap coffee and old floor cleaner. I remember the buzzing lights above the aisles. I remember the quiet hum of the refrigerators against the back wall. I remember the clock hanging above the cigarette shelves, ticking forward so slowly that it felt like it was doing it on purpose. That clock had tortured me for hours. Every time I looked at it, only a few minutes had passed. Time felt like sand slipping through my fingers, slow and pointless and impossible to hold. I stood behind the cash register wearing an XL uniform shirt that did not fit me at all. It hung off my shoulders like a curtain. Above my name tag was a big printed smiley face, bright yellow and far too cheerful. Under it, in round letters, was the company slogan: "We bring happiness to your everyday needs." Every time I saw that sentence, I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was so far from the truth that it almost became a joke. To say this job drained the life out of me would be putting it nicely. It did more than that. It slowly scraped away at me, hour by hour, night by night, until I felt like I was becoming part of the place. Another tired object under the fluorescent lights. Still, the job paid the bills. It kept food on the table, it helped me pay rent, and, if I am being honest, it kept my terrible nicotine habit alive too. That was not something I was proud of, but it was true. The night had been boring up to that point. The kind of boring that makes you feel like your brain is turning into warm water. Then the bell above the front door rang. A large man walked into the gas station, pushing the door open hard enough that the bell gave a sharp little scream. He had a huge sweat stain across the back of his shirt, even though it was not especially hot outside. He moved like someone who was tired and thirsty and annoyed by both things. I slipped my black hair into a quick bun and put on my best customer service smile. "Hi there," I said brightly, even though I felt anything but bright. He gave me a small nod and walked toward the drink station without saying anything. I watched him as he grabbed a plastic cup, filled it with ice, and placed it under the coffee machine. Then he pressed the button for a double espresso with one thick finger. The machine started grinding coffee beans, making that rough, angry sound I had heard 1,000 times before. A moment later, hot coffee began pouring over the ice, melting it halfway as dark liquid filled the cup. He looked over at me for a second. We made eye contact. I gave him another polite smile, the kind that is not really a smile at all, but more of a mask you wear when you work in retail. He looked around the gas station. His eyes moved from the refrigerators to the snack shelves, then finally to the cigarettes behind my head. He stared at them for a while, like he was trying to decide which brand would be most pleasing to his lungs that night. I understood that look. I knew it too well. Since he seemed interested, I decided to do my job. "Which brand of cigarettes would you like, sir?" I asked, turning slightly toward the shelves behind me. As I turned, I adjusted the ring in my nose and scratched an itch on my back through the loose fabric of my uniform. "A pack of Golden Marbs is fine. Peach," he said. The coffee machine clicked just then, letting us both know the drink was done. I reached up to the top shelf and grabbed the Golden Marlboros. Then I scanned them and waited while he made his way to the counter. He placed the iced double espresso down in front of me, and I slid the cigarettes toward him. "That comes to $13 with tax, sir," I said. He started rubbing the side of his head while digging through his pockets. After a few seconds, he pulled out an old $20 bill that looked like it had spent a week in the bottom of someone's shoe. He gave it to me with a strange, almost wild smile. "Keep the change," he said. Then he took his cigarettes and coffee and left. The bell rang again as the door closed behind him. I watched him walk across the parking lot under the yellow lights. Then he disappeared into the night, and I went back to staring at the clock. Nothing felt wrong yet. That is what bothers me now. I wish I could say there had been some warning. I wish I had heard a strange sound, or felt the air change, or seen something move in the reflection of the glass doors. But I didn't. Everything was normal. Then the bell rang again. I looked toward the entrance and saw a short little girl walking into the gas station. She looked young, maybe 8 or 9. She came in quickly, but not like she was excited, more like she had been told to hurry. She was heading straight for the cash register with a crumpled bill clutched tightly in one hand. At first, I thought I understood the situation. A parent was teaching their child how to pay for gas, or maybe trying to help her feel independent. I had seen it before. Parents liked sending kids in with money while they waited outside, watching through the windshield. My guess seemed right when I looked past the girl and saw a woman sitting in a car near one of the pumps. She looked like a tired mother. She was leaning back in the driver's seat, looking down at her phone. The little girl reached the counter. She was sweating, not just a little either. Sweat was running down her forehead and making her hair stick to her face. Her eyes kept moving over me, up and down, like she was studying me but trying not to be caught doing it. I leaned on the counter to make myself look less intimidating. "Hi," I said gently. This time, the smile on my face felt real. After the last customer, talking to a nervous child almost felt refreshing. She looked down at the floor and mumbled the number of the pump. Her voice was small and shaky, normal for a shy kid. I looked out the window again and checked the pump number. The woman in the car was still there, still looking at her phone. Everything matched up. Nothing about it should have scared me. The girl handed me the crumpled bill. I took it and started putting the gas amount into the register. I was already getting ready to give her change and send her back outside when something about her made me pause. I can't explain what I noticed first. Maybe it was the way she was breathing. Maybe it was how still her face had suddenly become. Maybe it was the way her eyes lifted and fixed on mine too sharply, too knowingly for a child. She seemed to realize I was watching her. Then she looked right at me, and she spoke. "Which brand of cigarettes would you like, sir?" The words came out of her mouth slowly and clearly. For a second, I could not move. I could not even breathe. The voice that came from her throat was not the trembling little voice she had used before. It was flat and polite in a fake way, with a rough edge beneath it, like the voice of someone who smoked too much and slept too little. It was my voice, not just similar. Mine the same tone, the same rhythm, the same tired customer service politeness I had used minutes earlier with the large man. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I had been stabbed. "What?" I whispered. The little girl did not blink. $13, she said. I stepped back from the counter. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. Her left eye twitched. Then she smiled. It was not the smile of a child. It stretched too evenly across her face, showing a perfect set of adult white teeth. They were too big for her mouth, too straight, too clean. They looked like they had been taken from a grown person and placed inside a child's face. "With tax, sir," she said. My mind could not hold on to what I was seeing. Reality seemed to bend around her. The bright lights of the gas station looked too sharp and too far away. The shelves behind her seemed to stretch. The humming refrigerators grew louder and louder until the sound filled my head. The little girl stood in front of me, but she was changing. At first, I thought I was falling. Then I realized it was worse than that. I felt like I was shrinking. The counter seemed taller. The shelves rose higher. The cigarette display behind me climbed above my head. My uniform became heavy around my body, loose and strange, like it no longer belonged to me. At the same time, the child began to rise. Her arms stretched, her legs lengthened, her face pulled itself into new angles. The skin shifted, not quickly, but smoothly, like wet clay being shaped by invisible hands. I wanted to scream, but my throat closed. I looked out toward the pump. The car was gone. The patient mother was gone. There was no one outside waiting for her. The girl kept growing. A ring of metal appeared in her nose, my septum piercing. Her hair darkened and pulled itself back. The shape of her face sharpened. Her shoulders widened beneath an invisible weight. Her clothes seemed to ripple and change like a bad dream trying to copy real life. I felt something being pulled out of me. Not blood, not breath. Something deeper. Something that made me. It felt like my name, my face, my voice, and every small habit I had ever owned were being stolen at once. I tried to hold on to them, but there was nothing to grab. I was falling away from myself. The last thing I saw before everything went black was her standing behind the counter, wearing my face, smiling my smile. Then there was nothing. When I woke up, my manager was shaking my shoulder. "Hey, wake up. Come on, wake up." His voice sounded far away at first, like he was speaking from the end of a tunnel. My eyes opened slowly. I was on the floor behind the counter, lying partly on my side, with my cheek pressed against the cold tile. The lights above me buzzed. The gas station looked normal again. My manager crouched over me with a worried but annoyed look on his face. "Did you take something?" he asked. "What? Drugs? Alcohol? Anything?" "No," I said quickly. My mouth felt dry. My head was pounding. My body felt wrong, like I had been taken apart and put back together too fast. He stared at me. "You were out cold when I came in." "I must have passed out," I said. "What happened?" "I don't know." I tried to sit up, but the room tilted. He helped me to my feet and told me to sit in the back room. He asked again if I had taken anything. I denied it again. Eventually, he called someone to cover the shift and sent me home. I am on paid sick leave now. At least, I think I am. That was what he told me at the time. I still don't know what the child was. I don't know what happened after I passed out. I don't know if the security cameras caught anything. And honestly, I am too scared to ask. Part of me wants proof. Another part of me is terrified that there is proof, and that it shows something even worse than I remember. But since that night, I have had a terrible feeling inside me. A feeling that something was taken. Not my wallet, not my phone, not my money. Something worse. It feels like I was robbed of my identity. At first, I thought maybe I had imagined it all. Maybe I really had passed out from exhaustion. Maybe my brain had turned a strange customer and a shy kid into a nightmare. I tried to tell myself that. I really did. But then yesterday, my worst fear came true. I was watching the news. I almost never watch the news, but I had been sitting at home, restless and anxious, flipping through channels, because I could not focus on anything. Then I saw a face on the screen that made my whole body go cold. My face. A photo of me filled the corner of the screen. Under it were big red letters. Wanted. I stopped breathing. The newsreader was talking, but for a few seconds I could not understand the words. I just stared at myself on the screen. My own eyes, my own hair, my own face, my own name. Then the details began to sink in. I will not write down everything that thing has done while wearing my appearance. I can't. I don't even like thinking about it. The crimes were terrible, violent, cruel, the kind of things people remember, the kind of things that make strangers look over their shoulders and lock their doors. And every report said it was me. They showed security footage from different places. A street corner, a shop, a parking lot. In every clip there I was, walking calmly through the world doing things I had never done. But I knew it was not me. I could see the difference. Maybe other people couldn't, but I could. The way it moved was too smooth, too careful, like it was still learning how my body worked. The way it smiled was wrong too. It smiled at the wrong moments. It held the expression for too long. But it had my face. And that was enough. After the news report, my phone started lighting up non-stop. Missed calls from my family. Missed calls from my friends. Missed calls from my boss. Text messages. Voicemails. People asking where I was. People asking what I had done. People telling me to turn myself in. People begging me to explain. How can I explain something I don't even understand? How can I tell the police that a small child with adult teeth walked into the gas station, spoke in my voice, and stole my face? No one would believe me. I barely believe myself. But I know what I saw. I know what happened to me. I have not answered most of the calls. I cannot risk it. The more I speak to people, the easier it will be for someone to find me. The police are probably already looking. They probably think I am hiding because I am guilty. Maybe, in a way, I am guilty of something. I smiled at that thing. I spoke to it. I let it come close. I did not run when I had the chance, because I did not know there was anything to run from. Now something is out there wearing my life like a uniform. It has my face. It has my voice. It probably has my name. It might know my habits, my history, my movements, the way I stand, the way I talk to strangers, the way I adjust my nose ring when I'm nervous. Maybe it took all of that from me. Maybe that is what I felt when I was lying on the floor of the gas station, slipping away from myself. I do not know what I am anymore. I still look like me when I look in the mirror, at least for now. But something feels thinner, like I am a copy of a copy. Like whatever makes a person real has been scraped out of me and handed to something else. I am already risking too much by posting this story here. I know that. If anyone traces this back to me, I am finished. If the police find me, they will not listen. They will put me in handcuffs and ask me questions I cannot answer. They will show me footage of my own face committing crimes I never committed. They will ask where I was. They will ask for proof. And I will have nothing but a story about a child with impossible teeth. So, I have to leave. I have to go into hiding before they track me down. I don't know where I will go. I don't know how long I can stay hidden. I don't even know if hiding will help, because if that thing stole more than my face, it may know where I would run. But I have no other choice. Please listen to me. If you ever see a small child alone at night, especially somewhere like a gas station or an empty shop, be careful. If the child speaks in a voice that does not belong to them, run. If they smile and their teeth look too white, too straight, Too adult, do not speak to them. Do not ask if they are okay. Do not try to help. Do not let them study you. Do not let them hear your voice for too long. Just get away. Because I think that is how it starts. It watches, it listens, it learns, and when it has enough of you, it takes the rest. I do not know what that thing is doing under the cover of my appearance right now. I do not know where it will go next. I do not know how many lives it can steal, or if I was the first. But I know one thing. The safest thing you can do is run. Story 2. The car came for me just after sunset. It was a Rolls Royce, polished so perfectly that the dark road seemed to bend across its surface. When the back door opened, I saw crimson leather inside, rich and deep, like the inside of a jewel box. The chauffeur stepped out first. He was a strikingly handsome man, the sort of man people turn to look at even before knowing why. He wore a black three-piece suit, a matching tie, tanned leather driving gloves, Chanel sunglasses, and a flat cap. The flat cap was the only strange part. A chauffeur could wear a fedora, maybe a trilby, even a bowler if the household was old-fashioned enough. But a flat cap seemed wrong. Too casual. Too familiar. It made him look less like a driver and more like someone playing the role of one. He opened the door for me and gave a polite little bow. "Sir," he said. His voice was smooth and controlled, and there was no warmth in it. I stepped into the car with my small case of sheet music and my costume pieces folded neatly beside me. I was dressed mostly already, in a black tuxedo with a dark tie. Over my face, I wore a domino mask shaped and decorated to look like a raven. It had small black feathers around the edges and a sharp beak, like point above the nose. It was ridiculous, but the fee I had been offered was far too large for pride to matter. Before the car moved, the chauffeur handed me a black blindfold. "You must wear this over the mask," he said. I looked at him for a moment, waiting for some explanation. He gave none. I had been told ahead of time that the location was private. I had been told the hosts valued their secrecy. I had also been told that if I refused any condition in the contract, the performance would be canceled and I would lose the payment. So I put the blindfold on. The chauffeur shut the door and the car began to move. I settled back into the crimson leather and tried to focus on the music. I had been hired as the concert pianist for the evening, not as background entertainment, not as one more performer in a room full of rich people, but as the main piece of the night. I had been paid an amount so large that even now, it feels embarrassing to admit I accepted it without asking more questions. The instructions were strange, but simple. I was to perform a private recital at an unknown location. The audience would be attending a formal masked ball. Everyone would be costumed as birds. The guests would wear bright, beautiful costumes. The staff and performers would wear darker birds. I had been told to come as a raven. It sounded like the sort of event that could only be imagined by people with too much money and too little meaning in their lives. During the drive, I pictured myself playing the night's composition. It was a difficult work, inspired by Ravel's Gaspard de la Nuit. It demanded speed, strength, delicacy, and a perfect understanding of silence between notes. The rehearsal time had been shorter than I liked, and the sheet music was unusual, but I had welcomed the challenge. I had built my career on being able to perform music that made other pianists hesitate. In the dark behind the blindfold, I moved my fingers slightly against my knees, imagining the keys beneath them. I heard the notes in my head. I felt the pattern of the first movement, the sharp changes, the strange rhythms, the moments where the music almost seemed to pull away from human logic. The car moved smoothly beneath me. I do not know how long we traveled. Without sight, time became soft and uncertain. The road was smooth for a while, then rougher. There were long turns. There was a climb, or at least I thought there was. I felt the car rise and dip. Once, I thought I heard branches scrape lightly against the outside of the vehicle. Then even that sound faded. At last, the car slowed. The chauffeur's voice came from the front seat. "You may remove the blindfold." I untied it carefully and blinked as my eyes adjusted. The car had stopped in a circular driveway. The surface beneath us was clean, smooth cement, not cracked or worn like any country road I had ever seen. Wrought iron lampposts lined the drive, filling the air with an unnatural golden light. On both sides, perfectly trimmed topiary trees stood in strict lines, shaped into cones and spirals and animal-like forms. The garden looked as if someone had tried to force the wilderness into obedience. Beyond the lamplight, the forest waited. It was not garden darkness, it was real darkness. Deep and alive. Pine and fir trees stood beyond the trimmed borders, their branches packed together so thickly that I could not see far into them. The golden light touched the first few trunks and then died. Past that, anything could have been watching. I expected wealth. I had accepted enough private jobs to know what wealth looked like. Marble floors, imported glass, tasteless paintings, gold taps in bathrooms no guest would use. But I had not expected this. The building in front of me was enormous. It rose from the forest like something stolen from another country and another century. 2 marble domes crowned a central building that had been arranged with almost painful balance. Colossal marble columns held up a grand front. The stone was cream-colored and smooth, glowing under the lamps like old bone. It was beautiful and ugly at the same time. The building did not belong there, not among those trees, not in that cold, silent forest. It looked like a pleasure palace built by someone who believed nature was an enemy to be defeated. It was a blight on the land, a cream-colored sickness planted in the middle of a majestic forest. A wide marble staircase led up to bronze-tinted oak doors. As I stepped out of the car, those doors opened inward. The building seemed to be waiting for me. The chauffeur raised one leather-gloved hand toward the stairs. "Please," he said, "your hosts await." I climbed. The silence bothered me before I reached the top. There should have been sounds. A breeze moving through the shrubs, night birds calling from the trees, the distant hum of electricity from the huge building ahead, even the low noise of party guests inside. There was nothing. No wind, no insects, no birds, no music, no voices. Only the soft sound of my shoes on the marble steps. When I reached the doors and glanced behind me, the car was gone. I had not heard it leave. Above the entrance, set into a curved space in the stone, was a mosaic. Tiny tiles of purple, blue, green, white, and gold formed the image of a peacock. Its tail spread wide, proud and shining, its eyes made from bright fragments that seemed almost wet in the lamplight. Then someone spoke behind me. "Hello, sir. Please follow me." I turned and found myself facing the chauffeur again. At least, for one startled second, I thought it was him. The man before me had the same handsome face, the same perfect jaw, the same neat mouth, the same careful stillness. He also wore a flat cap. But he was not dressed as the chauffeur. He wore a gray tweed suit and a gray owl mask that covered the upper part of his face. He was so similar to the driver that it made my stomach tighten. Twins, I thought at first. That had to be it. But even twins rarely looked that alike. The chauffeur and the butler seemed less like brothers, and more like 2 dolls pressed from the same mold. The new flat cap stepped through the doors, and I followed. Inside, the entrance hall was lined with bronze statues. They were modern and strange. not the heroic figures found in museums. Their bodies were impressionistic, long and twisted, and their faces had no features. No eyes, no mouths, no noses. The bronze had been oxidized on purpose, giving it colors of purple, blue, and green. Under the light, the statues seemed almost damp. I wanted to stop and study them, but the butler did not slow down. We passed from the entrance into the main hall, and the ceiling opened high above us. The buildings inside was shaped like a grand nave, more like a church than a ballroom. The space was enormous, lined with aisles, columns, and alcoves. Above us, shadows gathered in the domed ceiling. Below, the guests turned as I entered. They were dressed in bright finery, ball gowns, tuxedos, feathered masks, jewels, silk, velvet. They had come as birds of paradise. Pink flamingos, parrots, toucans, macaws, peacocks, and other beautiful creatures with colors too rich to look natural. The servants were different. They were dressed as I was, in black or gray. Crows, ravens, rooks, owls, jackdaws, dark birds moving between the bright ones, carrying trays of drinks, lowering their heads, never speaking unless spoken to. As the butler led me deeper into the hall, the guests parted. They stared at me with wide eyes. Some held glasses halfway to their mouths. Some whispered behind masks. Others simply watched. From the excited murmur that rose around me, I understood that they had been waiting for my arrival. The hall grew quieter as I approached a raised platform. There were more bronze statues in the recessed alcoves above the aisles. Unlike classical statues, which often gaze upward or outward, these stared downward. Their blank faces seemed to acknowledge the people below. I felt, absurdly, as if they were looking through me, searching for something inside my body. A soul, perhaps, if such a thing truly exists. The guests stopped moving. The silence that had surrounded the building seemed to expand inside it. I could hear small things that should have been hidden. Breath behind masks, the clink of crystal, the quiet shift of fabric. I even imagined I could hear the blood moving through the arteries of the guests. As a pianist, silence is normally my ally. A quiet room allows every note to bloom. But this was not normal silence. It felt hungry. It felt like the kind of silence that did not wait for sound, but consumed it. I worried suddenly that my music would be swallowed by the room. I rubbed my hands together. They ached faintly. In the days leading up to the performance, they had cramped during rehearsal. The pain had come and gone like a phantom, as though my hands had been cut away and replaced with silk and glass. It had not affected my playing, but it frightened me. For a pianist, the hands are not only tools, they are life. If your hands fail, your career fails with them. This was a private event for powerful clients. Patrons talked. Patrons judged. A weak performance could ruin a reputation that had taken years to build. At the base of the platform stood my hosts. They were a man and a woman dressed as peacocks. The man wore a three-piece suit of shimmering green fabric, embroidered with blue and purple patterns. His mask was made from translucent material shaped into feathers, with a golden beak over the nose. The woman wore a similar mask, smaller and more elegant, and a long emerald gown, with a blue, green, and purple train that spread behind her like peacock feathers catching moonlight. Their eyes glittered with mischief. The woman greeted me first. "A pleasure to have you this evening," she said. "This celebration will depend on your performance. But first, some housekeeping. I have instructions." I waited. "The first instruction is in your contract. One of your ankles must be cuffed to the piano. I already knew that part. It was strange, but rich people often included strange conditions in private contracts. Some wanted the pianist to wear a mask. Some wanted no applause until the end. Some wanted the lights off. I had learned not to take offense too quickly. Then she cleared her throat. The second instruction is a surprise, she said. You will be playing a piano duo. I know you are mostly a soloist, but tonight requires two pianists. I felt my jaw tighten. There was always something humiliating or insulting with clients like these. They paid too much money and assumed that meant artistry was theirs to bend. They did not understand the thousands of hours behind a performance. They did not understand the standards a musician holds himself to. To throw a duet at me without warning was more than rude. It was an insult to my profession. Then I noticed another platform farther down the nave. There was another Steinway there, and seated beside it, dressed in costume, was Peter Ducky. Even with the mask, I knew him immediately. Peter Ducky was a pianist I had known for years. He was talented, cruel, vain, and thin in every possible way. Thin fingers, thin lips, thin body, thin smile. If my life were an opera, he would have been the rival waiting in the wings with a poisoned glass. We no longer auditioned for the same positions, but we moved in the same circles. We had smiled at each other in lobbies, traded polite insults at receptions, and listened to each other perform with the hatred of men who know exactly how good the other one is. When he saw me looking, he bowed slightly. Then he smiled. It was a smug smile, sharp enough to cut. The woman host continued. Just so you know, the music will be discordant. You must concentrate on precision tonight. The two parts are meant to resist each other. I am not friendly with Duque, I said. The woman smiled. Name your price. So I did. She paid it without hesitation. That should have been my warning. So, that is the price of your discomfort? She asked. Her smile widened, and I noticed gemstones set into her teeth. Tiny bright stones glittered between the white enamel. Behind them, her gums looked too red. Please attach yourself to the piano. I asked that no one touch me while I played. She nodded politely. I climbed onto the platform and sat at the Steinway and Sons Model D waiting there. It was a magnificent instrument, black and perfect, its surface reflecting the lights and masks around me. A metal cuff was attached to the lower frame. I fastened it around one ankle, but when no one checked the lock, I left it open. The sheet music on the stand was familiar and unfamiliar at once. I had rehearsed my part. I knew the notes. But now, seated in that impossible room with Peter across from me and the masked guests waiting below, the music looked different. The black notes on the white paper seemed too dense, too alive. I reminded myself who I was. I was not a servant. I was not a toy. I was a master pianist. Performance was my entire life. When I sat before a piano, I controlled the room. Or so I believed. My eyes traveled across the hall to Peter. He met my stare with open dislike and that hollow grin of his. His long fingers hovered over the keys of his own Steinway. There was no conductor, no one counted us in. The costumed guests waited, the statues watched. The silence stretched thinner and thinner until I thought it might tear. Then Peter raised one hand dramatically. Together, in perfect synchronization, we began. At first, I forgot my fear. That is the danger of mastery. When the hands know what to do, the mind follows. The opening passage demanded full control, and I gave it. My part began in C major. Peter's entered in F sharp major. The two keys fought each other, clashing and circling like two seas pushing together from opposite sides of the world. The two pieces were not written by the same hand. I could feel that immediately. My part had one language, his had another. Yet the rhythms met in strange places. The syncopations caught, the notes resisted one another, but sometimes they locked together in a way that made the air shift. Peter played with wild energy. His shoulders moved, his head tossed, and his long curly hair bounced with the violence of his hands. He performed as if he wanted the audience to see every feeling passing through him. He had always believed a pianist should bleed emotion into the air. I was different. I relied on precision. I moved little. My strength was control. The hall's acoustics were perfect. Too perfect. Every note rose cleanly and returned from the marble like something freshly sharpened. The guests began to move. I had played for audiences before. I was used to polite attention, to people sitting quietly, trapped by beauty. This crowd did not sit. They writhed. At first they only swayed. Then their bodies twisted together. Couples danced with hungry, awkward passion. Feathers shook. Gowns spun. Masks flashed in the golden light. The air began to taste strange, like salt and champagne. The first movement flowed into the second. The music grew quieter, but the room became hotter. The guests gathered beneath the platforms, half below me, half below Peter, as if the two pianos had divided them into opposing tides. Our music moved in call and response, tearing through the crowd. My notes reached out, then Peter's answered. The two tempos battled and then merged. The effect on the guests was terrible. Their dancing became less human. Limbs bent at wrong angles, necks stretched too far, hands pressed against faces as if trying to hold them in place. Two people in bright parrot costumes spun together until their bodies seemed to blur at the edges. A woman in a flamingo gown arched backwards so far I thought her spine would snap, and yet she kept smiling. The music was doing something to them. No, that is too simple. The music was letting something else do something to them. Sweat ran down my face. The lights flickered. I looked up at the bronze statues in the alcoves. They moved. Not fully, not like living people. But the shadows around them stuttered, and in that broken light their blank faces changed. Holes opened where mouths should have been. Teeth appeared inside metal. Peacock-like eyes blinked in eyeless bronze. Nostrils flared in faces that had not possessed noses moments before. Their limbs twisted with slow pleasure. They were feeding. I knew this in the same way one knows a room has become cold. There was no proof, but the body understands. The statues were feeding on the madness rising from the crowd. The music by itself was not wild. If someone had looked only at the sheet music, perhaps it would have seemed difficult but controlled. But when my part and Peter's part joined, the harmonics opened something. They loosened the mind. They allowed human brains to notice a part of the universe that should have remained hidden. The guests were not simply dancing. They were being torn open from within. Their minds were exposed to an intelligence that hated humanity, not in the way one person hates another, but in the way fire consumes paper without caring what words are written on it. I wish I had stopped then. I wish I had pulled my hands away and stood up. I wish I had run, even with the cuff on my ankle. But across the room, Peter was laughing. He saw it too. I know he did. His eyes were wide, his mouth open, his face shining with sweat and delight. He looked not afraid, but thrilled, as if the collapse of reality were an honor he had been waiting to receive. And because I hated him, because I could not let him continue while I failed, I kept playing. That shame is mine. Looking back now, I believed the music itself had already begun to control us. It had entered through repetition and rhythm. It had wrapped around the nerves in my hands. I felt my fingers moving perfectly, but they no longer seemed completely mine. The third movement began with a harsh change in rhythm. That was when the blood started. The peacock hosts had moved into the crowd. They were no longer simply watching. From beneath their beautiful garments, they had drawn instruments of torture. Fine blades, hooks, thin metal tools, things that glittered in the flickering light. The bright guests attacked the darker servants first. Crows, ravens, owls, rooks, the staff fell beneath them, silent at first, then screaming. Blood sprayed across marble, crystal glasses shattered. Feathers became wet and heavy. The peacock man and woman smiled with perfect white teeth as they moved through the violence like dancers. My hands felt slick. For one terrible second, I thought they were covered in blood, too. Then I realized it was sweat. Terror had soaked my palms, my back, my neck, even the backs of my knees. Still, I played. The music rose. I began to wonder who had created it. If my part and Peter's part were written by different composers, how had they been made to fit together in such an impossible way? Had someone discovered this music? Had someone received it in dreams? Had it written itself through human hands? These were not the harmonies of art. They were the harmonies of murdered inspiration, of muses left to rot in dark rooms. The fourth movement came, though I do not remember choosing to continue into it. The room no longer made sense. The floor had become a sea of blood and bodies. The peacock hosts waded through it, slick with dark, thick gore. Their eyes, ears, and mouths leaked black filth. Some of the guests were dead. Others were alive but changed, crawling through the blood with teeth sharpened and eyes full of worship. The statues thrashed in their alcoves, their limbs stretched like folded paper being pulled apart. Arms multiplied. Fingers vanished into distances that could not exist inside a building. Their mouths opened into long bronze screams, and behind them I saw impossible spaces. Not rooms, not skies. Something older and larger. The music had broken the walls of the world. The marble buildings softened and warped. The domes above us seemed to melt. Columns bent like wax. The floor lifted and fell like water. I could no longer tell if we were inside a palace, inside a cathedral, inside a sheet of music, or inside the mind of something vast and cruel. The name came to me then, Rex Mundi. The king of the world, not a king like a man with a crown, not even a god in any human sense, a force, a living idea, a great hidden hunger pressing against reality from the other side. The music was not calling it. The music was making a place where it could enter. Peter and I were building a nest for it with our hands. That thought cut through some of the madness. Without the pianos, without the strings and keys, without the air to carry sound and human ears to receive it, perhaps the thing could not exist here. Perhaps the music needed us. It needed our bodies, our fingers, our brains, our training, our pride. We were not performers. We were doors. Those still alive in the crowd moaned and thrashed. The peacocks were the only clear figures left, standing above the dead like priests of a religion made from cruelty. Black fluid poured from their faces. I felt the same substance leaking from my own eyes and nose, thin and warm. The music had not spared me. Across the hall, Peter's body jerked as we approached the final crescendo. His back arched so violently that I thought it would break. His fingers struck the keys with impossible speed. His eyes bulged. His grin was gone now. Whatever joy he had felt had become terror. but he could not stop. Neither could I. My hands moved across the black and white keys, and for a moment they no longer looked human. The bones seemed curved and long, like the forelegs of a praying mantis. My fingers struck notes that should not have been playable. The piano answered with sounds that should not have existed. Reality balanced on an edge. I understood that if we finished the piece, something would be born into the world. Something that would not kill us out of anger, but erase us, because we were beneath notice. I had one last clear thought. The music was reaching me through my mind, so I broke the mind's path. I brought my head down hard against the piano. The pain was bright and immediate. The sound inside my skull was louder than any note. For one blessed second, my hands relaxed. The music lost its hold on me. A rush of heat struck me. All the energy that had been gathering in the room collapsed inward. The shattered pieces of reality snapped back toward one another. I felt myself lifted from the bench, weightless, helpless, and then thrown down across the piano. The last thing I saw was Peter across the hall, still at his keys, his body twisting beneath the weight of the final notes. Then, unconsciousness took me. When I woke, I could not hear. At first, I thought the world was silent again. Then I realized the silence was inside me. My ears rang with nothing. My head throbbed. My face was sticky with blood. I opened my eyes. The building was in ruins. Huge broken pieces of marble lay everywhere, scattered like the remains of a dead moon. Columns had fallen. The domes were open to the night. The forest had pushed close around the broken edges of the palace, dark and waiting. Bodies lay around the platforms, the bright guests, the dark servants, the peacock hosts, all dead. Peter's body was twisted beneath his piano. The instrument had collapsed over him, crushing him in a way I do not wish to describe. His long fingers still rested near the keys. I looked down at my ankle. The cuff was still there, hanging open. I do not know how long I sat before I moved. Panic rose in me slowly, not all at once. My hearing was gone. My career was gone. Perhaps my mind was gone too. I could not tell what had truly happened and what had been shown to me by the music. To calm myself, I began to hum. I could not hear the song. But it was familiar. Something simple from childhood. Something my mother used to hum when I was small and frightened. I felt it in my throat more than heard it. Above the broken palace, the sky began to brighten, not with dawn, with color. A rainbow glow spread across the darkness, soft at first, then stronger. Purple, blue, green, white, and gold shimmered across the ruined marble and the dead faces around me. For one impossible moment, the colors looked exactly like the tiles of the peacock mosaic above the door. Then, from somewhere deep in the forest, something answered my hum. Story 3. Hey, I have never posted here before. I have read a lot of stories from this place over the years, but I have always stayed quiet. I have used a few different usernames before, and sometimes I have not even logged in. I would just come here late at night and read about the strange things people had seen, the awful things they had lived through, and the horrors they somehow got pulled into. I never thought I would have my own reason to post. Right now, I am lying on the couch downstairs while my partner plays Dragon Ball Sparking, Zero on the TV. I was not really a fan of Dragon Ball before I met them, and I know that is not important to the story, but I guess I am saying it because I need to feel normal for a second. The bright colors from the game are flashing across the living room wall. I can hear the sounds of fighting, music, and button mashing beside me. My partner is sitting close enough that I should feel safe. But I do not. That is why I am writing this. I am downstairs right now, and I am scared to go back upstairs. I should probably explain the layout of the apartment first, because I think it matters. I know house descriptions can be boring, and I am sorry if this part is a little rough, but I need you to understand where everything is. We live in a medium-sized apartment. It has 2 floors, 3 bedrooms, 1 full bathroom, 1 half bathroom, a laundry room that is more like a hallway than an actual room, a living room with an open entrance, and a kitchen and dining room. The kitchen also has a door that opens into a small backyard. The downstairs area has the living room, the kitchen, the dining room, the half bathroom, and the narrow laundry space. The living room is where the TV is, and that is where I am right now. The upstairs area has all 3 bedrooms and the full bathroom. When you come through the front door, the staircase is immediately to the left. It goes up and curves a little at the top. If you stand at the bottom of the stairs and look up, the full bathroom door is almost directly ahead at the top, maybe a foot or so from where the stairway ends. From there, the upstairs hallway turns right toward the first bedroom, then turns right again. The second bedroom is on the left side of that hall, and the last bedroom is directly at the end. That last bedroom is where my partner and I sleep. Or, more accurately, it is where my partner still sleeps. It is where I used to sleep. I know that sounds dramatic, but lately I have not been able to stay in that room for long. I have been sleeping downstairs more and more, and I do not think it is only because I feel sick. That brings me to the main reason I am posting. For the past several days, maybe longer, I have been feeling unusually sick. But it is not like any normal sickness I have had before. Usually, when I am sick, I know what is happening. My nose gets blocked, I sneeze constantly, my throat hurts, I cannot breathe properly, and I feel tired in that heavy flu-like way. It is unpleasant, but it makes sense. You know your body is fighting something. This does not feel like that. This feels wrong. The headaches are the worst part. They are not like normal headaches. They are not just dull pain behind the eyes or pressure around the forehead. These headaches feel like my brain is either shrinking in on itself or trying to push outward against my skull. I know that sounds strange, but that is the only way I can describe it. Imagine a sharp, high-pitched sound. Not a long sound, but a quick little ding. Now imagine that sound is not in your ears, but inside your head. Then imagine it happening again, and again, and again, over and over, with no real pause between it. That is what the pain feels like. It pulses and stabs and rings through my skull until I want to press my hands against my temples and scream. I have tried everything I normally use: water, caffeine, pain medication, my usual mix of things that can usually take the edge off when I feel awful. Nothing works. Nothing even seems strong enough to touch it. Then there are the electric shocks. I do not know how to explain those properly either. They are not exactly painful, but they are sharp and disturbing. Imagine a sudden tingling shock running through your body every time you move, not on your skin, but deeper, like it is traveling through your veins and arteries. It starts somewhere in the middle of me and shoots outward into my arms, legs, hands, and feet. It is like my body has wires inside it, and someone keeps sending little bursts of electricity through them. It gets worse when I move. It gets worse upstairs. It gets worse when I go to bed. I should also mention that I am normally an extremely heavy sleeper. I mean extremely heavy. I have had family members take a watch off my wrist while I was sleeping, and I did not wake up. They were not stealing it or anything. It just needed to be charged, and because I am forgetful, I kept sleeping with it on until the battery died. Someone would take it off, put it on charge, and I would not notice a thing. That is how deeply I usually sleep. So the fact that I have barely slept for the last 3 or 4 nights is not normal for me at all. When I do sleep, it is not real rest. It is broken and strange. I wake up at odd hours in positions I do not remember moving into. Sometimes my arm is numb, sometimes my leg is numb. Sometimes I wake with my face half pressed into the pillow and my head pounding so badly that I have to bite back a groan because I do not want to wake my partner. Then I force my eyes shut again, hoping sleep will come back. Sometimes it does. Most of the time, it does not. After it happens enough times in one night, I usually give up and go downstairs. I take my blanket, or sometimes I do not even bother, and I come down to the couch. The living room feels safer. I do not know why. It is not brighter unless I turn on a light. It is not warmer. It is not more comfortable than the bed. But it feels less heavy. The upstairs bedroom has started to feel wrong when my partner is asleep and I am awake. That is another thing I do not know how to explain. The darkness in that room does not feel like normal darkness anymore. I know what a dark bedroom feels like. Everyone does. You lie there, your eyes adjust, and after a while you can see the shape of the wardrobe, the door, the pile of clothes on a chair, the edge of the bed. It is still dark, but it is familiar. The darkness in that room feels different now. It feels occupied. It feels like there is something wrong with it, like the air itself has changed. My partner has told me before that there are spirits in this apartment. I know how that sounds. I know some people will stop reading right there, but they have always spoken about it in a calm way, like it is just part of living here. They have said there is one spirit they are sure about, and they have also assured me that she would not do anything like this. I believe them. I believe that if the spirit they know is real, then she is not the one making me feel this way. But there is another one. This is the one my partner does not like talking about. They deny it now. They strongly deny it. Every time I bring it up, they say it was probably just a hallucination they had. They say they were sleep deprived at the time. They say it was not real. But that is the part that bothers me. If it was not real, why did they mention it like it was real when they first told me? The first time they talked about it, they described it as the spirit they sometimes saw on the staircase. They said it was completely black, except for a plain white face. No features. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. Just a white face on a black shape. They said they did not think it wanted to hurt them. They believed it was only watching over them. I did not like that even then. I liked it even less when they started acting as if they had never meant it seriously. It is one thing to say, I saw something when I was tired, and it scared me. It is another thing to say, there is a spirit on the stairs, and I think it watches over me, and then later insist it was probably nothing. That does not make me feel better. It makes me feel like they are scared to admit what they really saw. And now I cannot stop thinking about the stairs. I have to pass them to go upstairs. I have to climb them to reach the bedroom. The bathroom is at the top. The hallway turns right. The bedroom is at the end. Every part of that path feels too open now, too exposed. I feel like something could be standing just around the curve at the top, waiting where I cannot see it from below. Lately, my symptoms always seem to get worse when I go upstairs. I can be sitting downstairs with only a mild headache, and then, the moment I climb the stairs, the pressure starts building behind my eyes. By the time I reach the bedroom, it feels like my skull is too small for what is inside it. When I lie down, the electric shocks start again, sharper than before. If I turn over, they shoot through my limbs. If I move my neck, they run down my spine. If I try to close my eyes, that high-pitched dinging pain starts inside my head. It is like my body is warning me not to sleep there, or something is warning me to leave. That is the thought I keep coming back to, even though I hate it. I am worried that this thing, this spirit, or whatever it is trying to force me out of the apartment. Or worse, out of my partner's life. I know that sounds paranoid. I know it sounds like I am connecting things that do not belong together. But when you are awake night after night, when your body hurts in ways you cannot explain, when every trip upstairs makes you feel worse, and when the person you love once told you about a black figure with a white featureless face on the staircase, it becomes hard not to connect things. My partner does not seem affected the way I am. They sleep in that room. They can stay upstairs. They can go up and down those stairs without stopping halfway and feeling like something cold is pressing against their chest. That scares me too. If the spirit is real, and if it has been here longer than I have, maybe it sees me as the problem. Maybe it sees me as an intruder. Maybe it does not want me sleeping in that room. Maybe it does not want me close to my partner. Maybe it has been watching me from the staircase this whole time. I hate writing that. Even now, as I type this, I keep glancing toward the stairs. From where I am on the couch, I cannot see all the way up. I can see the bottom steps and part of the wall. The rest disappears around the curve. The TV light keeps flashing across the room, and every time it changes, the shadows near the staircase move slightly. I keep telling myself, it is only the game. It is only the light. It is only my tired eyes. But I do not fully believe that. My partner is still playing, still focused on the screen. They do not seem worried. Every now and then they say something about the match or the character they are using, and I nod or give some small reply, but I am barely listening. My attention keeps drifting back to the stairs. A few minutes ago, I thought I saw something dark at the top. I do not know if I really did. It might have just been the shadow from the railing. It might have been the flicker of the TV. It might have been nothing at all. But it looked like a head. A dark head. Just there for a second, above the curve of the stairs, before the light changed, and it was gone. The headache is starting again now. It began while I was writing this. At first, it was only a dull pressure behind my eyes, and I thought maybe it was from looking at my phone screen too long. That would make sense. I have not been sleeping. I have been stressed. The screen is bright. Maybe that is all it is. But now it is getting sharper. The little dinging sensation is back inside my skull. It is not as bad as it gets upstairs. Not yet. But it is building. And now I am wondering if it is because of the phone or because I am writing this. Maybe I am right. Maybe the spirit does not want me telling anyone. Maybe it does not want me reaching out to people who might believe me, or people who might know what it is, or people who might tell me how to protect myself. My partner just laughed at something on the screen, and for a second I almost asked them to pause the game and look at the stairs with me, but I stopped myself. I already know what they will say. They will say I am tired. They will say I am making myself worse by thinking about it. They will say the spirit on the stairs was not real, that they were just sleep deprived when they saw it. Maybe they will be right, but if they are right, why does upstairs feel like poison? Why do I feel sick every time I try to sleep beside them? Why does the bedroom feel like it belongs to someone else? And why, when I picture the staircase in my mind, do I keep seeing that black shape standing there with its blank white face turned toward me? I do not want to leave my partner. I do not want to move out. I do not want to be scared of a home that is supposed to be safe. But I also do not know how much longer I can keep sleeping on the couch and pretending this is just a weird stretch of bad headaches and insomnia. Something is wrong here. I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in the air upstairs. I can feel it in the way the darkness changes when I am alone in that room. I am asking for advice because I do not know what else to do. Has anyone heard of a spirit like this before? A black figure with a white, featureless face? Something that waits on staircases? Something that watches one person but seems to reject another? Could something like that attach itself to a person and become jealous or protective? Could it make someone physically sick to push them away? I know some of you will tell me to see a doctor. I probably should. I am not saying I should ignore the headaches or the electric shocks. They are scary on their own. But the timing, the place, the way it all gets worse upstairs. The thing my partner once said they saw on the stairs, all of it feels connected. And if it is connected, then I need help before it gets worse. Because I am starting to think the spirit is not just watching anymore. I think it knows I know about it. And I think it wants me gone. Story 4. My wife and I spent almost 7 years trying to have a child. In the beginning, it felt hopeful. It even felt exciting. Every month we told ourselves that this time would be different. This would be the month everything changed. This would be the month the test finally showed what we had been praying to see for so long. We bought pregnancy tests in bulk and kept them under the bathroom sink like they were some kind of secret treasure. We stopped drinking. We changed what we ate. We took vitamins. We read articles late at night until our eyes hurt. We tracked calendars, temperatures, symptoms, ovulation cycles, and every tiny change in my wife's body. Slowly, without either of us noticing at first, our lives stopped being measured in days and started being measured in numbers. This day was important. That day was too early. That week might be the one. Those 2 weeks after that were full of waiting, hoping, and trying not to hope too much. At first, hope made us feel alive. Then, hope became routine. Routine became disappointment. And after enough disappointment, it turned into something we no longer talked about. People tried to be kind. I know that now. They did not mean to hurt us. They said the things people say when they do not know what else to offer. They told us to relax, as if a child would appear the moment we stopped wanting one so badly. They told us about cousins and friends who had struggled too, and then suddenly had 3 children. They told us adoption was beautiful, which it is, but they said it like our grief was something we could simply replace. And sometimes, they said the worst thing of all. Maybe it just isn't meant to be. After hearing that enough times, you stop wanting sympathy. You stop explaining. You stop letting people see how much it hurts. You smile, nod, change the subject, and go home with your wife in silence. So when my wife finally got pregnant, neither of us believed it. She took the first test early one morning. I was still half asleep when I heard her call my name from the bathroom. Her voice sounded strange, soft and frightened. I found her sitting on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the little plastic stick in her hand. There were 2 lines. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then she took another test. And another. Then we drove to a clinic because we were both convinced there had to be some mistake. Maybe the tests were faulty. Maybe we were reading them wrong. Maybe our bodies had played one more cruel joke on us. But the doctor smiled. There was no mistake. 9 months later, our daughter Lily was born. She was tiny and red and furious at the world. She had my wife's eyes, wide and dark and full of life. She had my nose, which my wife joked was unfair because Lily had done nothing to deserve that. Behind her left ear was a tiny birthmark pale brown, and shaped almost like a little leaf. For the first few months, she cried constantly. She cried when she was hungry. She cried when she was tired. She cried when she was clean, dry, fed, warm, and held. Sometimes she cried for reasons we never understood. She kept us awake almost every night. I remember walking around the living room at 3 in the morning, rocking her against my chest while whispering songs I barely knew the words to. I remember my wife sitting on the couch with tears in her eyes, not because she was sad, but because she was exhausted beyond words. And I remember thinking I had never been happier in my life. Everything we owned slowly became hers. The walls filled with finger paintings that looked like nothing but meant everything to her. The refrigerator disappeared beneath drawings she proudly brought home from school, each one held out to us like a masterpiece. There were tiny shoes by the front door, usually kicked off in 2 different directions. There was a yellow plastic duck in the bathtub. Half-finished puzzles were scattered across the living room floor. Stuffed animals sat on chairs as if they were guests waiting for tea. Before Lily, our house had always felt too quiet. After Lily, it finally sounded alive. There was always some small noise somewhere. Her feet running across the hallway, her voice asking questions from another room, her laughter bursting out at things only she understood, the television playing cartoons, my wife singing softly while brushing Lily's hair in the morning, toys being dropped, doors being opened, little hands tapping on windows. The house had a heartbeat. Then, on a Saturday afternoon, everything ended. It was an ordinary day. That is the part that still feels cruelest. There was no warning, no strange feeling in the air, no dream the night before, no moment where I looked at my daughter and felt I should hold her tighter. It was just a normal Saturday. My wife was upstairs folding laundry. I was in the garage looking for a screwdriver. Lily was running through the hallway, playing one of her favorite games. She had decided the floor was lava, and she was jumping from one rug to another, laughing every time she made it safely. I remember hearing her little feet. I remember her voice calling out to herself as she played. Safe. Safe. Lava. Jump. I stepped into the doorway and told her to slow down. She did not listen. Of course, she did not. She was 6 years old, full of energy, and too happy to be careful. A second later, I heard her foot slip. Then I heard the sound of her body falling down the wooden staircase. One step, then another, then another. Each sound was dull and heavy and wrong. I dropped whatever I was holding and ran. By the time I reached the front hall, she had already stopped moving. Lily was lying at the bottom of the stairs on her side. One arm was twisted beneath her in a way no arm should bend. Her hair was spread across the floor. Blood was spreading beneath her head, dark and fast, soaking into the cracks between the wooden boards. There was a jagged crack along the side of her skull where she had hit the edge of the bottom step. For one impossible moment, my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. My wife came running down the stairs behind me. She screamed Lily's name before she even reached the bottom. She dropped to her knees beside her, sobbing, brushing Lily's hair away from her face, trying to wake her, trying to turn her over, trying to do everything and nothing at once. Her hands became slick with blood, but she did not seem to notice. I could not move. I just stood there and stared. A few seconds earlier, our daughter had been laughing. Now the only sounds in the house were my wife's screams and the old grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Tick, tick, tick. I finally knelt beside Lily and took her hand. It was still warm. That broke something in me. Somehow the warmth felt like proof that she was still there, like she had only fallen asleep, like if I held her hand tightly enough, I could keep her from leaving. I kept telling myself that warmth meant life. It had to mean life. Dead things were cold. My daughter was warm. Then we heard it. Crack, a sharp, wet sound. At first, I thought it came from the floorboards. The old house made noises sometimes. Wood shifted. Pipes knocked. The walls settled at night. Then it came again. Crack, my wife stopped crying for half a second and looked at me. Her voice shook. Did you hear that? Before I could answer, Lily's body twitched. Not gently. Not like a person waking up. It was violent. Her back arched off the floor so hard that I heard something pop inside her. Her tiny fingers curled inward, tighter and tighter, until the nails bent back and snapped. Her jaw dropped open far wider than it should have been able to, and a thick stream of blood poured from her mouth, running down her chin and neck. My wife screamed and reached toward her. I grabbed her arm before she could touch Lily. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Lily's stomach began to swell. At first, it looked like a small movement under her shirt. Then, it grew. Her belly rose higher and higher, stretching the fabric. The skin underneath pulled tight, too tight, and thin blue veins pushed to the surface like roots under pale soil. It looked as though something inside her was pressing outward. My wife whispered. No, I could not speak. Lily's ribs started moving. They were not simply breaking. That would have been horrible enough. They were bending outward beneath her skin, one by one, as if something inside her was forcing them open. Each movement came with a sickening crack that echoed through the hallway. Crack, crack, crack. The skin between her ribs split. Blood spilled over her sides and across the hardwood floor. The smell reached me almost immediately. Hot, metallic, thick. I had smelled blood before, in small ways. A cut finger. A nosebleed. A scraped knee. This was different. This filled the room. It got into my throat and stayed there. The opening in her chest widened on its own. Muscle tore in long, stringy strands. Her small body peeled open slowly with a wet, ripping sound I will hear in my dreams until the day I die. My wife had stopped screaming. She was making a low sound now, a broken sound from somewhere deep inside her chest. Then something moved inside Lily. Not her heart, not her lungs, not anything that belonged in a child's body. A hand appeared, small, covered in blood. It gripped the edge of her broken ribs like someone climbing out of a hole. Another hand followed. My wife collapsed beside me, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. I wanted to close my eyes. I wanted to turn away. I wanted to wake up in the garage with the screwdriver still in my hand and Lily still laughing in the hall. But I could not look away. The little girl pulled herself out of Lily's body. She forced her shoulders through the torn opening, twisting and wriggling while pieces of flesh clung to her skin. They stretched and snapped as she pushed free. She slid onto the floor with a heavy, wet slap and lay there for a moment in a pool of blood. She was covered from head to toe. Blood ran down her face. Bits of skin and tissue were tangled in her hair. Her chest rose and fell quickly, like she had been holding her breath for a very long time. The room smelled like a slaughterhouse. Then she moved. She placed her hands on the floor and pushed herself up. Her arms trembled. She tried to stand, but her legs shook beneath her like a newborn animal trying to walk for the first time. She stumbled once, then again. Then she caught her balance. Slowly, she looked up at us. She had Lily's face, not a similar face. Not a face that reminded me of Lily. It was Lily. The same freckles across her nose, the same dark eyes, the same crooked little smile, the same missing front tooth from when she had bitten into an apple the week before and proudly shown us the gap. She blinked at us. Then she tilted her head. In the exact same sleepy voice she used every morning before school, she said, "Daddy?" My wife made a sound like she had been stabbed. The little girl looked at her and smiled. "Mommy?" We buried what was left of our daughter before sunrise. I do not remember deciding to do it. I do not remember getting the shovel. I do not remember choosing the place. I only remember the cold air in the backyard and the heavy weight of the thing wrapped in the old bedsheet. Neither of us spoke while we dug. My wife had washed the blood from the hallway as best as she could, though dark stains remained in the wood. I had wrapped what was left of Lily's body because neither of us could bear to look at it. There was not much left to recognize anyway. Bones, torn skin, blood, an empty shell that looked like something had hollowed her out from the inside and then left it behind. We buried her beneath the old oak tree at the edge of our backyard. Lily had loved that tree. She used to collect acorns beneath it and call them treasure. She used to say that when she was older, she wanted me to build her a treehouse in its branches. I dug until my hands blistered. My wife stood beside me with her arms wrapped around herself, rocking slightly back and forth. When the hole was deep enough, we lowered the sheet into it. I almost said a prayer, but no words came. What kind of prayer do you say when your dead child has already come back into the house? We covered the grave with dirt. Then we went back inside. The little girl was asleep on our couch, curled beneath one of Lily's blankets. She looked peaceful. Innocent, her hair was clean now because my wife had washed it while crying so hard she could barely stand. She had dressed her in one of Lily's nightgowns. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. When she woke up, she smiled at us. And she remembered everything. Not just Lily's name. Not just our faces. Everything. She remembered her birthday party, the one with the cheap paper crowns and the cake my wife had stayed up all night making. She remembered her favorite stuffed rabbit, Mr. Buttons, who had one eye missing because our old dog chewed it when Lily was 3. She remembered the silly song my wife sang while brushing her hair. She remembered the secret handshake we made up before bedtime. She remembered the small things no stranger could have known. She even asked why I had buried her blue shoes with the other me. Neither of us had told her we had done that. For weeks, we barely slept. We watched her constantly. At night, my wife sat beside her bed with the lights off, listening to her breathe. During the day, I followed her from room to room, pretending to clean or fix things while I studied her every movement. We checked her skin for cuts, scars, stitches, bruises, anything that might prove she was not our daughter. There was nothing. No marks, no wounds, no sign she had ever crawled out of a broken body on our hallway floor. She laughed the same. She cried the same. She got angry when she did not get her way. She asked for pancakes on Sunday mornings. She ran through the house even after we begged her not to. She fell asleep with one hand tucked under her cheek. She was Lily. Or she was close enough that we needed her to be. Grief does strange things to people. It makes impossible things seem like gifts if they hurt a little less than the truth. After a while, we stopped asking what she was. We stopped whispering in the kitchen after she went to bed. We stopped searching online for words like resurrection, parasite, demon, rebirth, child double, and possession. Eventually, we convinced ourselves that God had given us another chance. Maybe he had seen how long we waited for her. Maybe he had seen that losing her after only 6 years was too cruel. Maybe he had done something beyond our understanding. That was easier than believing the truth. Then Lily died again. It happened 3 months later. She caught a fever first. Nothing too frightening at the beginning. Children get fevers. We gave her medicine, placed cool cloths on her forehead, and let her sleep in our bed. But by midnight, her skin was burning hot. Her eyes rolled strangely under her lids. Her breathing became uneven. We were getting ready to take her to the hospital when she suddenly sat straight up and began to choke. My wife screamed her name. I grabbed Lily, but her body went limp in my arms. She died before we reached the car. And then the cracking started again. This time, we knew what the sound was. That made it worse. Her body split open across the stomach, while my wife stood in the driveway screaming into her hands. Blood poured over my arms. The ribs opened. The flesh tore. A small hand pushed through. Another Lily crawled out. She was shaking and wet and covered in blood, just like the first one. She looked at us, blinked, and cried. "Daddy, it hurt." We buried the second body beside the first. After that, things changed. Not all at once, not in a way anyone outside the house would have noticed. But my wife and I felt it. The new Lily remembered dying. She remembered the fall down the stairs. She remembered the fever. She remembered crawling out. She asked questions no child should ever ask. Did I make a mess? Did the other me feel it too? Will it happen again? We told her no. We lied. It happened again a month later. Then again. Then again. Each death was different. Once, she slipped in the bathtub and hit her head. Once, she stopped breathing in her sleep. Once, she ran into the street after a ball, and a passing truck never even slowed down. Once, she fell from the old oak tree, the same tree where all the graves were hidden beneath fresh soil and dead leaves. Every time, another Lily came out. Every time, she remembered more. And every time, she came back a little colder than before. At first, the changes were small. She stopped laughing at things she used to love. She no longer wanted bedtime stories. She stared at her old drawings on the refrigerator like they had been made by someone else. She began asking where the buried ones went. My wife tried to hold her one night, but Lily pushed her away and said, "You smell like crying." Another time, I caught her standing at the back window, looking toward the oak tree. I asked what she was doing. She said, "Listening." To what? She smiled. To me. The first time one of them tried to kill my wife, I convinced myself it was an accident. My wife was walking down the stairs with a laundry basket. Lily was sitting at the top step, brushing the hair of her stuffed rabbit. As my wife passed, Lily reached out and touched her ankle. Just a small touch. But my wife lost her balance and nearly fell. I caught her before she went down. Lily looked up at us with wide eyes and said she was sorry. I believed her because I needed to. The second time, there was no mistake. My wife was asleep on the couch. Lily stood beside her, holding one of my kitchen knives. She was not crying. She was not sleepwalking. She was just watching my wife breathe. When I shouted her name, she turned to me slowly. Then she smiled. Not Lily's crooked little smile. Something older. Something patient. I took the knife from her hand. She did not fight me. She only said, "There will be more room when Mommy is gone." After that, my wife began locking the bedroom door at night. Then Lily died again. And again, I have buried more daughters than I can count. That is not something a father should ever be able to say. Even writing it makes my hands shake. There are graves beneath the oak tree, behind the shed, along the fence, under the flower bed my wife stopped caring for. Some are deep, some are not. Some were dug in rain, some in snow, some in summer heat when the smell was almost too much to bear. Every one of them had Lily's face. Every one of them called me Dad. Every one of them came back. My wife is not the same anymore. I am not either. We move through the house like ghosts while our daughter watches us from doorways. We do not talk about doctors. We do not talk about police. We do not talk about leaving. We tried once. We packed bags in the middle of the night, but Lily was already sitting in the back seat when we opened the garage door. She had not been there a moment before. She smiled and asked where we were going. My wife broke after that. Now she spends most days in bed, facing the wall. Sometimes she sings the hairbrushing song under her breath, but she never finishes it. Lily hates that song now. When she hears it, she stands very still and waits until my wife stops. I am writing this because I do not know what else to do anymore. There are countless little graves in my backyard. Some nights, when the house is quiet, I hear movement under the soil. Soft scratching, small fingers pushing against woodless dirt. Sometimes I think I hear whispering beneath the old oak tree. Many little voices speaking at once, all of them sounding like my daughter. And Lily is standing in the doorway behind me right now. I can see her reflection in the dark computer screen. She is wearing her yellow nightgown. Her hair is brushed neatly. Her feet are bare. Her head is tilted to one side, the way it always tilts when she is curious. She is waiting for me to finish. She just asked me why I am writing about the others. I told her I was almost done. She smiled and said, "Good." Then she took one step closer. I do not know which Lily this is anymore. I only know she still calls me Daddy. Story 5. For my whole life, something has knocked on my bedroom door every night. It never happened at the same time. Some nights I would hear it around 10 in the evening, right when the house was starting to go quiet. Other nights, it would happen around 4 in the morning, when everything outside was black and still. It was never loud enough to wake me from deep sleep, but if I was already awake, I would hear it. Sometimes I stayed up all night playing Xbox, and even through my headset, with game sounds and my friends talking in my ear, I would still hear it faintly through the door. Knock, knock. It only happened when it was dark outside, never during the day, never in the morning, never when the sun was up. The strange thing is, it never really scared me when I was young. It should have. I know that now. A child should be terrified if something comes to his bedroom door every night and knocks, especially when nobody is supposed to be there. But I was not scared, because my parents told me it was normal. They said it happened to them too when they were younger. They said it was nothing to worry about as long as I followed one simple rule. Never acknowledge the knocker in any way. That was all. Do not answer it. Do not speak to it. Do not ask who is there. Do not open the door. Do not even act like you heard it. Just ignore it. I trusted my parents, so I trusted the rule. And because I trusted the rule, I also trusted the knocking. That sounds insane to me now, but when you are a child, your parents' words become the shape of the world. If they tell you something is normal, then it becomes normal. If they tell you something is safe as long as you ignore it, then you believe them. After a while, the knocking became part of my life. It was like the creaking of the house at night, or the hum of the refrigerator, or the sound of cars passing outside. It was strange, yes, but it was familiar. Sometimes, in a way I hate admitting, it was almost comforting. It reminded me that the night was passing the way it always did. I would hear the knock, turn over in bed, and know that everything was still in its usual place. Of course, I understand now how wrong that was. I understand how deeply creepy it is to feel comfort from something unknown knocking on your door in the dark. But when you grow up with something, no matter how strange it is, it becomes normal. You stop questioning it. You stop wondering why it happens. You just accept it as part of your life. That is exactly what happened to me. Growing up, I never had many friends. I was quiet and shy. I always thought of myself as the introverted type. But really, I was scared of people. I was scared of saying the wrong thing, scared of being laughed at, scared of not knowing how to act. I did not know how other kids made friends so easily. It seemed natural for them, like breathing. For me, every conversation felt like walking across a thin bridge. But I did have one friend. His name was Max. Max and I met when we were 9 years old. His family moved into the house next door to mine. I remember the day they arrived. A moving truck was parked in their driveway, and people were carrying boxes into the house. My parents thought it would be a good idea to invite them over for dinner so everyone could meet. I did not want to be part of it, but my dad made me spend time with their only child. That was Max. At first, I expected the evening to be awkward. I thought we would sit in my room in silence while our parents talked downstairs. But Max was easy to talk to. He liked the same movies I liked, he watched the same TV shows, he played the same games. He did not make me feel weird for being quiet. He just talked enough for both of us until I felt comfortable enough to join in. After that, we became inseparable. We grew up together. We hung out almost every day after school. We rode bikes around the neighborhood, played video games, watched movies, made up stupid jokes, and spent entire summers doing nothing important. He was not just my neighbor. He was my best friend. For many years, he was my only real friend. There was one thing I never told him about, though: the knocker. My parents had told me not to tell anyone. They said people would not understand. They said other people might think I was crazy. When I was little, I believed everyone had their own knocker. I thought it was just one of those things adults did not talk about much. I was 10 years old before I learned that most people did not hear something knocking on their bedroom door every night. For some reason, that made me feel special. Not safe exactly, but different. Like my family had been chosen for something, though I did not know what. Still, I never told Max. I wanted to sometimes. He was my best friend, and keeping a secret like that from him felt wrong. But the fear of getting in trouble was stronger. When you are a kid, getting in trouble can feel like the end of the world. I did not want my parents to find out I had told him. I did not want them angry at me, so I kept quiet. Because of the knocking, I rarely invited Max to sleep over at my house. Most of our sleepovers happened at his place. He had a better gaming setup anyway, so it made sense. He had a bigger TV, more games, and a chair that spun around. I was at his house so often that our parents used to joke that I had a second home and a second family. But the real reason I preferred his house was simple. At his house, there was no knocking. At least, not that I ever heard. One Saturday night, when we were 15, Max insisted on sleeping over at my house. I remember how nervous I felt as soon as he asked. Sleepovers were still a big deal to us back then. We were not little kids anymore, but we still liked staying up late, playing games, eating junk food, and talking about anything that came to mind. It should have been normal. It should have been fun. But all I could think about was the knocker. I tried to suggest his house instead, but Max would not let it go. He said we were always at his place, and that it was my turn to host. He said my parents liked him, and it would be fine. I did not have a good excuse, and I did not want to make him suspicious. So I agreed. He came over around 7 in the evening, after both of our families had eaten dinner. We went straight to my room and started playing Xbox. For a while, everything was fine. We played for hours, laughing, yelling at the screen, and eating chips. But the longer we stayed awake, the more aware I became of the time. Every few minutes, I looked at the clock. 8:30, 9:15, 9:40. 10. My stomach was tight. I kept hoping the knocking would come late that night. Maybe after we were asleep. Maybe not at all, though I knew that almost never happened. At 10:15, my mother called me from her room. Her voice sounded strange. I paused the game and stepped out into the hallway. She was standing in her doorway, looking worried. More worried than I had ever seen her over the knocking. She pulled me into her bedroom and closed the door behind us. "You need to get Max to go to sleep," she said quietly. I did not have to ask why. I already knew. "I don't think he will," I whispered. "He usually stays up really late." My mother cursed under her breath. That scared me more than anything else. My mother did not usually curse. Not like that. Her face looked pale and tight, like she was trying not to panic. "Okay," she said. "Just try. If he hears it, tell him it's nothing. I can't make him go home." His parents told me they needed a break tonight. I nodded because I did not know what else to do. When I walked back to my room, Max was still sitting on the floor with the controller in his hands. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "We have to go to bed soon. My mom said we need to." Max looked at me like I had just said something ridiculous. "What? Why? We usually stay up way later than this." I opened my mouth to make up some excuse. I was going to say my parents were tired, or that we would get in trouble, or that we could wake up early and keep playing. But before I could say anything, it happened. Knock, knock. It was soft, gentle, almost polite. Exactly the way it usually sounded, but it had come much earlier than usual. My eyes widened. I put a finger to my lips, begging Max to be quiet without actually saying it. He did not understand. "What was that?" he asked. "Is that your mom?" I shook my head quickly and put my finger to my lips again. But Max did not listen. "Who is that?" he asked, louder this time. My whole body went cold. He had acknowledged it. He had broken the rule. I had always followed the rule, so I had no idea what would happen if someone did not. My parents had never told me what came next. They had only told me never to answer, never acknowledge it, never give it attention, and Max had just done exactly that. For about a minute, we stood there in silence. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. I tried to tell myself there was another explanation. Maybe it was my parents. Maybe they were trying to scare us into going to bed. Maybe this had all been some awful joke my whole life. For one tiny second, I almost believed that. Then, the knock came again. Knock, knock. This time, it was loud. Not gentle. Not polite. It sounded like someone had hit the door hard with their knuckles. The noise cracked through the room and seemed to shake the walls. I was sure my parents could hear it. They had to hear it. There was no way they could not. I stood frozen, completely overtaken by fear. I had heard the knocking my whole life, but I had never heard it knock a second time. I had never heard it get louder. Something had changed. Something had gone wrong. My instincts told me we were in real danger, but I had no idea what to do. "What's going on?" Max whispered. His voice shook. He was terrified now, too. I wanted to answer him, but how could I explain it? How do you tell your best friend that something has been knocking on your door every night for as long as you can remember, and that he just made the worst mistake possible by asking who it was? I only shook my head and whispered, "Be quiet." We stood there, trying to make as little noise as possible. I wanted to run to my parents, but to do that, I would have to open the bedroom door. And the bedroom door was exactly where the knocking had come from. We were trapped. Then, the knocking came again. This time, it was gentle like the first knock. Knock, knock. And then came a voice. "Hello? May I come in?" My blood turned to ice. The voice sounded exactly like Max. Not similar. Not close, exactly like him. It came from the other side of my bedroom door, in Max's voice, asking to come in. Max looked at me with such horror in his eyes that I thought he was going to cry. I must have looked the same. His face had gone pale, and his mouth was slightly open, but no sound came out at first. Then he took one step backward and whispered something. I could not hear what he said. It was too quiet for me to understand. But whatever was on the other side heard it. The door exploded with sound. Something began pounding on it, again and again, faster than any human could knock. The whole room seemed to shake. I screamed for my parents. I screamed as loud as I could, but they did not come. The walls vibrated around us. The door jumped in its frame. The noise was so loud and so constant that I thought my ears might start bleeding if it went on any longer. Max backed away from the door, shaking. I grabbed his arm without thinking and pulled him toward the far side of the room. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the pounding stopped. The silence that followed was worse. For 1 second, I thought maybe it was over. Then, the light in my closet turned on. My closet door was partly open. From behind the frame, I saw a shape. It was huge and black, so wide it almost filled the entire closet. It did not look like a person. It did not look like an animal. It was just a large, dark mass standing where nothing should have been able to stand. The only part of it I could clearly see was its eyes. They were enormous. The eyes were almost a foot apart from each other. They glowed with an impossible dark green light. I do not know how to describe that color. It was dark, but bright at the same time. It was green, but not like any green I had ever seen. It felt like a color humans were not supposed to be able to see. Whatever that thing was, it did not belong in my room. It did not belong in our world. The closet light snapped off. Then the knocking started again. Knock, knock, knock. It was back at my bedroom door now. Each knock came slowly, with a second of silence between them. From the other side, we heard laughter. Max's laughter. Not Max beside me, Max's laughter from the hallway. The real Max was now openly crying. His whole body shook so badly that I thought he might collapse. He kept whispering under his breath. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I could not tell if he was saying it to me, to himself, or to whatever was outside the door. Then I had an idea. My bedroom window led into the backyard. If we could open it, we could climb out. It was not a long drop. We could run around the side of the house and get help, or at least get away from the door. "Open the window." I yelled at Max. He looked at me like he did not understand. "The window." I shouted. "Open it." That finally snapped him into motion. He ran to the window and started pulling at it. At first, it would not move. He yanked harder, crying and gasping. I looked back at the door. The wood was starting to crack. The frame shook with each hit. The door looked like it was slowly being forced inward. Whatever was on the other side was breaking it down piece by piece. "Come on." I screamed. Max pulled again. The window finally slid open. The second it opened, the pounding on the door stopped. The sudden quiet made both of us freeze, but only for a moment. I did not know what was going to happen next, and I did not want to find out. Max yelled at me to go first. I ran toward the window and climbed out as fast as I could. The moment my feet hit the ground outside, The window slammed shut behind me. I spun around. Max was still inside. He grabbed the window from the other side and pulled, but it would not open. I tried to lift it from outside, but the window only opened from the inside. No matter how hard I pushed or pulled, I could not help him. His face was inches from mine through the glass. I will never forget the look in his eyes. It was pure fear. But there was something else too. Betrayal, desperation, the terrible understanding that I was outside and he was not. I wanted to break the glass, but I had nothing in my hands. I looked around wildly for a rock, a tool, anything. Then, I heard the bedroom door break open from inside the house. The sound was enormous. It cracked through the night so loudly that I thought it must have woken the whole street. Max turned away from the window. Then, he looked back at me one last time. He was screaming. I could not hear the words through the closed glass, but I could see his mouth open wide. He reached for me with one hand, pressing it against the window. His face was filled with a kind of helpless sadness I hope I never see again in anyone's eyes. Then I blinked. And he was gone. Just gone. He did not fall. He did not get dragged away. He did not fade slowly. One moment he was there, screaming through the window, and the next moment the room behind the glass was empty. The entire neighborhood was quiet. No lights turned on in nearby houses. No dogs barked. No parents shouted. No one came outside. It was like the world had paused for just long enough to erase my best friend, then started again as if nothing had happened. I stood outside my window, frozen, after a few seconds. The reality of what had happened crashed into me. I ran around the house as fast as my legs could move. I threw open the back door and rushed through the kitchen, down the hall, and back to my bedroom. Max was not there. The door was not broken. The room looked normal. The window was closed. The closet was shut. Nothing was out of place. Then I turned and saw my parents standing in my doorway. They looked angry. Not scared, not worried. Angry. "What are you doing?" my dad asked. His voice sounded tired and defeated, but also furious. That made something in me snap. "What are you talking about?" I screamed. Max disappeared. "He's gone. I was screaming for you." My mother stared at me like I was insane. "Who the hell is Max?" she said. "Go to sleep. We'll talk about this in the morning." Her voice was even angrier than my dad's. I stared at both of them, waiting for one of them to break, waiting for one of them to admit they knew, waiting for them to run into the room and help me search. But they did not. My dad gave me one final look, then turned away. My mother followed him. They walked back down the hall and left me alone in my room. I did not sleep that night. How could I? I sat in bed, staring at the door, then the closet, then the window. My mind kept replaying everything: the knocking, the voice, the eyes in the closet, Max at the window, the way he vanished when I blinked. Where had he gone? Why were my parents pretending they did not know him? Why had they not helped us? The next morning, I tried to explain everything again. I thought maybe they had been half asleep and confused the night before. I thought maybe daylight would make them reasonable. But they both claimed they had no idea who Max was. I ran outside and looked at the house next door. A different family lived there. A family I had never seen before, yet somehow they looked completely settled in. There were toys in the yard, curtains in the windows, a car in the driveway. They moved around inside like they had lived there for years. I went through every photo I had. There were no pictures of Max, not one. Photos I remembered taking with him showed only me, standing alone or beside empty space. Pictures from birthdays, school events, and summer afternoons had changed. He was missing from all of them. I checked my yearbooks. Nothing. No Max. Not in class photos. Not in group photos. Not in the names listed at the back. I asked people at school about him. Teachers, classmates, kids who had played games with us online. Nobody remembered him. Nobody knew who I was talking about. Some people laughed and thought I had made him up. Others looked uncomfortable and told me I was confused. I searched for years. I could never find one trace of him. It was like Max had never existed. But I knew he had. I knew because I remembered his laugh. I remembered his favorite movies. I remembered the way he always picked the same character in fighting games and acted like it was a coincidence. I remembered how he once fell off his bike and tried not to cry because he thought I would tease him. I remembered his house, his parents, his room, his gaming setup. I remembered him like a real person because he was real. He was my best friend. And something took him. When I became old enough, I moved out of my parents' house. Not long after that, I cut almost all contact with them. I could not forgive them. They did not help me when I screamed. They never warned Max. They never warned his parents. They never explained what the knocker was or why it came to my door every night. After Max was taken, I only spoke to them when I had to. Over the years, that became less and less. Now that I am older, we only talk during emergencies, and even then, every conversation feels cold and unfinished. The strangest thing is that after Max disappeared, the knocking stopped. Completely, for the first time in my life, my bedroom door was silent at night. At first, it was hard to adjust. I had spent my entire childhood hearing that sound. The silence felt unnatural. I would lie awake waiting for the knock, expecting it to come at any second. But it never did. Part of me was relieved. Part of me was afraid of what that meant. I still think about Max every day, my childhood best friend. The best friend nobody else remembers. He did not deserve what happened to him. He did not deserve to be erased from the world because he asked one question he did not understand. For years, I blamed myself for not warning him. I should have told him about the rule. I should have ignored my parents and explained everything before he came over. Maybe he would have believed me. Maybe he would have stayed quiet. Maybe he would still be here. But I cannot change that night. I do not know what that thing was. I do not know why it knocked. I do not know why my family had to ignore it. I do not know what it wanted from us, or why it took Max instead of me. Most days I try not to think about it too much. Thinking about it never helps. It only brings back the sound of that door shaking in its frame, the sight of those green eyes in my closet, and Max's face pressed against the window. But there is one thing I know for sure. If I ever hear that familiar knock again, I am ignoring it. No matter what voice it uses, no matter who it sounds like, no matter how gently it asks to come in,